And everybody, welcome to the Arkansas Diamond Report with Dudley Dawson. I'm Jason Patterson. I want to thank you guys for jumping on with us this Memorial Day Monday, May 26, 2025. And man, Dudley, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And let me tell you, in the 30 seconds that you and I were talking pre-thing, I found out that this guy here, their grandson,
Uh-huh.
will be down here in Arkansas for my birthday. So I'm pretty pumped.
That is the best
Yes.
news.
Yes. That's the big I love baseball,
Uh-huh.
and all that, but and that I'd had a big smile on my face anyway because of this week and all that. But yeah, that just puts it over the top. That's fantastic.
I was gonna say, because whenever I put you back and when I added you in, I saw that huge grin. I'm like, what's going on here?
Hey man, being a dad is great. Being a grandpa is great, and being a baseball writer is pretty doggone cool too. Let's talk about it.
It is. It is. I do want to touch first on the Bogle Bombers. They fell to Ole Miss this weekend in the Super Regionals, and listening to Courtney and how she was explaining what this team meant to her and what she learned from them, it was something where you felt like they knew as a coaching staff that this was a team that could get to Oklahoma City, and it was almost like they felt it and they knew it was going to happen, and it just fell short.
Yeah, first of all, great catch by you on you almost said Omaha, but you got it. You caught it. You went Oklahoma City. You stopped at about the K, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but the I is what I try to be an objective sports writer, and you don't root for teams and that, and unless they're your professional teams and all that, and everybody knows who mine and notices is and all that. But as a dad, is a grandpa and all that, you can't help but be around these young ladies all season, see what they put into it, see how they came back from 1-5 in conference play to put themselves in this position, and then for food poisoning or the bug or whatever it is
Yeah.
to rear its ugly head on Thursday night, and then Friday them not have full strength, ready to go. We'll never know if that would have changed things, but it certainly will be something that when we write these stories in history, will be part of it. And I got to admit, when they got back to 4-4, uh, I thought that it definitely was going to, they were definitely going to swing it and crowd, and that would lift them over that thing and get them into playing Texas Tech on Thursday. But it did not happen. But the future's still bright. I feel sorry for Bree. By the way, great photography by our guy John D. James.
Yeah.
Bree in her moment of grief or whatever the word you want to call it. You got a great picture there, and that just kind of summed it up. When they say a picture tells you 1,000 words, that did right there. And the other pictures with her hugging her teammates and all that, and you feel as a father, and a grandfather and all that, you feel sorry when human beings have to go through that. Man, that's what sports is all about. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Uh, sometimes you're on the precipice of being there, and
Mhm.
that's the only door she's got left to knock down. And
Yeah.
if Courtney Difel never wins a national championship, she'll always be thought about as a great coach. Same way with Dave Van Horn. But both of these fantastic coaches want to do that, and their fans, I think, most of them want to do it, most of them want them to do it not only for the school, but for them as well, because they've been great, coaches and ambassadors of this university. And, it's just, certainly they do things wrong along the way, and we point it out when they do, but, you feel for them, even if you're trying to be objective.
Yeah, because after Aaliyah Benson, Benson had given up those.
Benford, yeah,
Benford, yes.
yeah. She was the star of the regional. I mean,
Man.
there were several others that contributed, but they don't have her. Then Arkansas's driving to Oklahoma City on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, because it was looking shaky there in that second inning, and then all of a sudden, waters calm for her, and then she gets dialed in. I think she retired, 12 straight batters of Arkansas's to finish out the game.
Yeah, and she was somebody that transferred in the portal. think a lot of people forget that Bree Ellis was a transfer portal
Mhm.
addition, and obviously we know about Kaylee Wyckoff and Courtney Day and their stories, and the others. Just a phenomenal. It's a phenomenal going from 1-23 to being disappointed when you don't get to the College World Series. But that's where she's put this program.
Yep.
They have a great recruiting class coming in. I'm sure they're going to add, some guys, but I think six of the nine starters coming back. So, you're in pretty good shape already.
Yeah, because I think you're only losing Bree Ellis, Reagan Kramer, and then Courtney Day, and that's it. Other than that, you got to
Yeah,
throw.
just three of the top four batters.
Yeah, that's all. But I do have to say this: you got your two-star aces coming. Well, actually, three with Cam Harrison. So you got Robin Herring, you've got Peyton Burnham, and you've got Cam Harrison all coming back, and that's going to be pretty filthy.
Yeah, it's they've got the program in good shape right now, and I know that I feel like that Coach Deifel and I only see each other outside of the ballpark at concerts, so I'm sure I'll see her maybe at Old Dominion this summer. We'll see. We both have an affinity for country music. I think the last time I saw her was for country. So yeah, and, good for them in the off season. I know, as she said last night, you and the others asked some great questions. It is tough to just kind of put everything in focus because you're hurting so much, at this point.
Mhm.
But I think when she looks back, yes, they'll be heartbroken. But if you think this was a bad season, then you need to check yourself.
Exactly. Well, I want to move on now because today Arkansas fans found out that Arkansas is the number 3 overall seed. They found out last night that again Fayetteville will be hosting a regional, but they'll also be in a really good spot to be hosting a super regional as well. Um, with being paired against the Tennessee Volunteers in their regional in Knoxville. I don't think that the committee had too many other places to put another SEC team, really, as far as the regionals go, because there's not really too many times you could not match up an SEC school when you have so many they're going to host.
Yeah, you had 8 teams hosting. You had 13 of the 16 in there. It's the best conference in the nation in baseball. There's no doubt about that. You can argue some other conferences, should be up the top, but you can't. 13 of the 16 just kind of tells you. So that's 13 to 64, and so they were. I think I was hearing from some fans early on that they just hoped that Ole Miss wasn't the 14th seed because that's been the bugaboo, there
Keith
this year,
Carter, man, Keith Carter.
yeah, and Perryville's on but it's a both of these regionals. There's no guarantee that Arkansas is going to get out of it. Certainly no guarantee that Tennessee's going to get out of theirs. And your
Mhm.
two aces, really, and Zach Root has had two subpar outings in 3 weeks or something like that. Obviously, pitched great. When he's not pitching against Ole Miss, it seems like. In Tennessee, 6 of 7 losses in their SEC series down the stretch. They did play really well at the SEC tournament, but Liam Doyle again, the guy who's going to be a top 5 draft pick.
Yeah.
He's not had his best outings either. So it is time to flip the switch for both teams and all these teams. And as we saw last night, it can all go away really quickly.
It can. Um, you know, I wanted to ask you really quick too before we really start to dive into the teams. Was there any player personnel updates that Dave gave today, possibly, or yesterday at all?
Carson Wiggins went ahead and had surgery. They kept I don't want to say him and hawing, but they were figuring it out. I think he got a second MRI. Went ahead and had surgery. Obviously he's in a situation that he would have been a force coming down these stretch. I think he had a couple of bad outings, which you have even when you have 101-mile-an-hour fastball. I suspect he'll be back now. I talked
Yeah.
to one of his good friends, Carson Brumbaugh, for a feature on our uh, site. If he didn't get the money and draft status he wants to, then I figure he will supplant Villoy as the shortstop next year with Nolan Souza staying at second base. We'll see how that plays itself out. Those are good problems to have, but
Yep.
but yes, I mean it is a the situation where you put yourself in, you play at home, you're 32-4. You've got the opportunity to maybe, put some bad memories out of the way these past 2 years. And I know that's what everybody's looking at. And I'm sure the team and the coach and the players have as well.
Mhm.
But this is what you want to be. You want to be playing a 21-30 team your first game in the NCAA tournament, and that's not being degrading to North Dakota State. It's just telling facts. They're 21-30. They started the season 0-13.
Yeah.
Beat Tulane in their 14th game. Anytime they've matched up against a Division One foe, I mean, excuse me, a major, Power Four, I guess we call it now. It's been rough on them, and I do expect them to come in here and play well. Certainly, they have some good players, and I listened to an interview today with a TV station. They're coming in here. They're not going to back down. They're saying all the right things, but again, 2031 and a team that's 32-4 at home this year, you should expect that Arkansas should be able to get out of that one fairly easy. Now, who you gonna pitch?
Yeah. I I would think that there's a possibility you might see either Beetlejuice, sorry, maybe Ben Bybee that first game, almost kind of treated as like a midweek matchup. So that way that you've got Root, you've also got, Jimenez, you've got all these other guys lined up behind. I would think that you would maybe see a midweek guy start on game one, because you also don't want to have happen like what happened with NJIT a couple of years ago, where it would turn out to be a slugfest, and that's what I think that Dave wants to limit it on first.
Yeah,
On
but
first game.
here's my thought on that, and I agree that that's certainly something you think about, and that has been done plenty during the 40 plus years I've been up here and covering Coach DeBryan's teams and Coach Van Horn's teams, and those are the two coaches. Those are the
Yeah,
only two
only two.
baseball coaches. Yeah, I don't know if it seems to your team like you're panicking. Zach Root has really only had bad outings against Ole Miss. It seems like.
Mhm.
The as I've said, Matt Hobbs and Dave Van Horn know more about baseball and have forgotten more about baseball than I know, and they're in it daily. And I'm just a fan and a writer from two different angles, whether it's a professional team or a college team. But there's also that situation that you have, whether he's last two out of his last three outings or two out of four, or whatever it is, have been not the greatest. You've also had a situation where, yes, Gage Wood is ready to go now, ready to go 80 to 100, but he hasn't, shown the ability so far, to give you the innings that you really need to get out of a starter in that first game. You don't want to have to come flying out of the bullpen with
Mhm.
with several pitchers, and that's the one thing I worry about with Gage Wood. He's taken himself from a latter round draft choice to when Kylie McDaniel of ESPN has him number 21, not in the 21st round, but 21st pick of the first round. And certainly there is a great potential there. That's what they
Mhm.
draft on. But yeah, I would be, and I guess Tatum here didn't like that comment. I don't know if you heard the clown thing you had going on over here, but there are a lot of great options, and they'll figure out what they're going to do. I worry about doing something different than you did during the year.
I see what you're saying there too, because you don't want to really turn the boat a little bit and start to get everything. You want to make sure, because I mean, let's face it, baseball players are creature of habit,
Mhm.
and whenever you disrupt that habit, sometimes that's when things could go sideways.
And the
So,
one thing I will, I listed all those stats. I went 13 to start the year, not great win-loss totals against the teams that they came down. North Dakota, you don't get to practice outside a lot, as,
mhm.
as Coach Van Horn pointed out today. So, they're just kind of finding their stride right now, and they've got very good baseball players. Looked over their roster today, very impressed with some of the stats and stuff they have. But you are it's much like, if I guess, if you were a guy who fished and didn't go out to the pond all the time and just thought you could go out there and be Bill Dance all of a sudden. It's but it is certainly a game that you could lose, and you don't need to do anything to put yourself in that situation because that first game, they always say the first game is important. You got to win that first game. But my God, that second game is the most important because you either then come
Yeah.
around at needing one win or three. And, that's what you have to factor in. And these guys have charts and stats. And, you look at, uh, as I looked over today, it was a more right-handed, I mean, a left-handed offense and that's another thing to factor in when you're taking Zach Root, Gage
Mhm.
Wood, Ben Bobby, all those into it. They've got all the splits. We just kind of look at it from afar and the eye test, and sometimes that's right, and sometimes, you find out, as I do all the time on major league games, that this right-hander he may pitch better against left-handers than he does right-handers. I
Yeah.
mean, pitch better against right-handers than he does left-handers. That's where all the analytics come in.
It is. It is. Let's take a look at the other three teams that we already talked. Actually, other two teams we already talked about NDSU a little bit. Let's talk about the 2 seed, the Kansas Jayhawks. They come into the postseason at 43-15, and they have a kind of an interesting. I mean, they have an interesting lineup that I was looking at just a little bit here. Now, they've only got 24 stolen bases, which I didn't think that there was another team out there that maybe Arkansas had as little as they have. But Kansas is not really that active on the base path. So that tells me that they're not really one of those live ball type of teams. They kind of sit back and I mean, they've got exactly 100 home runs this year as a team. So it almost kind of seems like they maybe depend more on the long ball than not.
Yeah, and let me just say, this is a team that has had a very good year, but it has had a very bad decade. This is the first time in 9 years that they will have made their way into the NC tournament. You don't even think about that being, something that could have happened because, that's a team that, in basketball and really in football had a surge there lately. They're 43-15, been a very good year for them. Got a new coach that has kind of rebuilt things. He was at Dallas Baptist
Mhm.
before then, and he's come around and done a lot to put Kansas in a position that they got, and but Coach Van Horn was quick to point out today, don't sleep on Creighton, who came out of the Big East 17-4,
Mhm.
and is a team that ironically played North Dakota State earlier in the year and was able to beat them 5-2. So that should give you an indication that those teams aren't maybe as far off as some might think. But certainly it's a you got to give Dan Fitzgerald, who's that coach at Kansas, a lot of credit for turning it around in a place we know that the NIL money is poured into basketball.
Yep. And looking here a little bit at Kansas's pitching rotation, it looks like they've got two guys that they really depend on, a third guy, and Cannon Carr. But really, the two guys that you look at, maybe Eric Lynn, but the two guys that really are Cooper Moore, and then also it looks like Dominic Vogel. Both of those guys combined for 16-6 this season with the 29 starts. But here's the thing: that their ERAs are, I mean, Cooper's is 3.76, but Vogel's is 5.34. So I mean, it's not that they're not getting quality starts, but they're still giving up runs.
Yeah, and you have to put in now the reconfiguration of the Big 12. They are playing some games where the ball flies in the air,
Mm-hmm.
at different places, and that factors. But 16-6, you can talk about those two. Those are two dudes. They are immune to giving up home runs, and in the Big 12, obviously we know from having Arkansas play those teams and having watched a lot of games just on ESPN Plus, how good those teams are. That when it comes to offense, sometimes they may not have the best pitch and may not have the best defense, but offense seems to be a thing of the Big 12. It is if they can get by Creighton, then they'll have the opportunity to play Arkansas, and I'm sure it'll be a great game. I'm already working on all my gray outfits since there won't be any red, white, blue, or green this weekend.
Yep. And also, one quick note on that Kansas club as well. I was kind of looking at their. Hold on just a second. I got to bring that back up here. Just a second here. it's their OPS as a team is 917. So that tells me that they're still getting on base no matter what. And like you said, with the Big 12 is as live ball as it is, these guys are in command. Like, and also each one of these teams that come in, they've got two starters. Whenever you get to this time of the year, everybody's got two starters that they can rely on. It's getting to the bullpen. I don't think that Arkansas is going to have too much trouble maybe that first game, but whenever you look at second, third, and fourth games, Arkansas is going to be able to get to that bullpen in each of these teams that they face, because if they don't and they let somebody get a little bit of a groove going, that's what we've seen the last 2 years between TCU and also Kansas State.
Yeah, and as we've seen over the years, and it doesn't matter whether it's here or any other place, you've got to have great pitching efforts. Obviously, you look back in these past 2 years when Arkansas hadn't gotten where it wants to go, and that obviously is College World Series. Even though they've had one great pitcher in there, the rest of the staff has not been, where you can count on. I think is the big thing, and it's not. I'm not trying to be degrading. I'm just looking back on results. Tired arms, injuries, they were a factor. Uh, I was asked today who I thought might be the keys in this series. I said Ryder Helfrich, because one of them, because he'll have the opportunity. He's had his bats. He's been swinging a bat well. He's calling pitches, and he's also playing defense. And he's done a good job when Arkansas has had issues. That has been a factor. So that's a guy. Gage Wood is another. But I think that bullpen, the back of that bullpen now. You had a couple of guys back there, Christian Fouts, some others that were struggling, a couple that were injured, but now I think you're in a good situation, as we saw last week after Root went out of the ball game, and really in that Tennessee series as well, except for a couple innings, you had the guys coming in out of the bullpen and really shutting things down, including Will. I've been here forever McIntyre, who was a little fired up, and that was fun to see.
Just a little bit. I want to give him the Brady Slavens
Forget
award.
you, he said.
Oh man, I want to look at just one quick comment I have on this Arkansas team. That you look at this year compared to last year, it seems like right around mid part of April, the wheels kind of fell off. This year it didn't. This year I felt like, regardless of what happened at the SEC tournament, and I want to touch on that here in a little bit, but the way that they finished the season, sweeping Texas, beating Tennessee also at home in 2 of 3. Last year, I don't think that happens. This year, I think that's where you see where this team has really turned that corner.
Yeah, and I would say that if Arkansas had not swept Texas and had not beat Tennessee 2 out of 3, if those things had been flipped or whatever, and they had won the other teams, I think Arkansas gets a break because of those two teams and how they played those teams. 5 out of 6 against those two teams that I thought going in would be two of the better teams at the end of the year, and certainly they were. But I think that I think it's a valid point that Arkansas had a schedule early on that maybe wasn't as tough as it was at the end, or late middle, however you want to phrase that. But I do think they're going into this situation, this regional, in better shape than they have been the past couple of years in terms of the amount of arms. Maybe not having Hagen Smith to go out there and I think a lot of people forget that game. That didn't work out last year, that game, even though he had such a great year. I do feel better about their pitching staff, and I mean as you get your Canadians and your Australians going, then you've got a chance.
Yeah, you do. You really do. Let's look at the Knoxville Regional for just a minute before we jump out of here, because that's who Arkansas is going to be paired up with. You've got Tennessee hosting Wake
They hope.
Forest. Yeah. They got Wake Forest. They've got Cincinnati and Miami of Ohio, which happens to be the conference champion out of the MAC. Wake Forest and Cincinnati gained at-large bids getting into the tournament. I know that Kyle Peterson, who was pretty boisterous whenever this seeding came out, that he thought that Wake Forest could be the team that'll come out of this versus maybe Tennessee. I don't know exactly why he would make that statement, just because the fact that Tennessee's playing at home. Vitello and company have been really good, and to really kind of poke the bear a little bit and put a little bit of fire under Tennessee almost sounded like it was more coordinated than anything else.
Well, I think that the betting public would tell you that Tennessee is going to come out of there. I think some of the guys who follow baseball are going, when they make those kind of statements. First of all, it draws attention. Second of all, Kyle's really good in his knowledge about baseball. He knows that Wake Forest has a really good pitching staff, and he also knows that they have a lot of big bats and have hit as many home runs as Tennessee. Let's be honest, Lindsey Nelson Field is not the most cavernous place in the world, and so it's going to be interesting. As I was telling somebody earlier today, the as a writer, there's no narrative that I'd rather write during Super Regional weekend than Arkansas and Tennessee, DVH and Tony V.
Yeah.
That's fun for me. I don't care who shows up here, but those would be some great stories. And obviously, what would it be like for a guy off the Dave Van Horn coaching tree to win the national championship, then come here this year in a super regional, and that be the lift that maybe Arkansas gets out of this onto the College World Series? You can write these scenarios. Sometimes they don't come true, but you can dream about it and you can start writing the stories in your head early.
Oh yeah, you definitely can. The guy that I think that Tennessee might have the hardest time with, if they end up matching up, sometimes the stars do kind of align with Blake Morningstar,
Mhm.
the lead guy from Wake Forest. If they're able to, if there's something that happens crazy where, and listen, at this time of the season, all kinds of weird things happen as far as baseball goes. Because, I mean, look at what happened with Arkansas against North Carolina State. Those sorts of things happen. And then you have Hagen Smith that kind of everything kind of just like fell apart one inning for him. But again, last year with Kansas State, these sort of things can happen. And I would like to see them happen to Tennessee. I would like to see Wake Forest come out of that. I mean, you never
Do
know.
you pitch? Do you pitch Duel the first game, or do you pitch Marcus? I mean, that's a decision that Tony and his pitching coach will have to make, and it's the same kind of situation you have up here. You know which one better during the year, but which one's been better lately?
Yep. And, and the stat that you pointed out to me earlier with Cincinnati stealing 125 bases this year out of 148, I do believe, attempts. Double check.
That's
Yeah,
decent. That's
142.
decent.
Yeah, that's some Ricky Henderson numbers right there.
That's
And they're
1980s Cardinal or 1980 early Cardinal stuff.
and I'm gonna have to give me a mulligan if I mispronounce this guy's name. His name is Landon Vidurek, and he is 37 of 38 on the base path this year. That's ridiculous.
He gets on, he's going.
Yeah, that is so true. Also, Michael Kepsky, I'm so sick of Ole Miss beating Arkansas on anything, but last night was brutal. This is why did Courtney Deifel throw the same pitcher back to back? The reason why, I'm going to jump on this really quick too. Before Peyton Burnham came in on Saturday night, Arkansas had given up 9 runs. The last 3 innings was pointed out by John James, our photographer. Had that in the story too. Arkansas held Ole Miss scoreless in the final 3 innings of that first game. She came out and was lights out, 3-hit shutout. You see that a lot more in softball, where if you got one pitcher that's on a roll, you put them right back out there again, unless it's something that's a little bit different. But whenever you're in a do or die situation like Arkansas was last night, she was on against Ole Miss. She had their number. That's why Courtney rolled with her again. And I think if you have to do it again, and you and I talked about this, Dudley, before the game, that was the smart move. That was the better's move at that point, because if you're hedging your bet against anything, you're going to put the person out there that would held them scoreless, throw her back out there again. Didn't happen, but you want to give yourself that chance. And I think that's what why Courtney went ahead and started Peyton over Robin last night.
It's very simple to go back and look at the 3 games down in Oxford, the 2 games here, and see who had the better numbers against Ole Miss. in those 6 games. Robin did not have great efforts against Ole Miss in those 2 games. Not
Mhm.
certainly up to the standards that she holds herself to, and that she done. Peyton had pitched really well against them twice, and was going to go on a third time here. I think it's certainly they made the right decision. We were talking about it before the game, and you let's just go back again. And it's not an excuse. It is a reason, though. You know, I haven't talked to Robin and don't know how well she felt going into that game. But once they started lighting Peyton up to a certain extent, I mean, they scored a couple of runs on, obviously on plays from third base that
Mhm.
Arkansas usually makes. Again, I like to think I know a lot of baseball and softball. I've watched a million games, but again, I defer to somebody who's around them most of the time and who has that decision making capability in themselves. Certainly, I and others can question what they do, but I don't think it's just a willy-nilly decision that they just say, I feel like this one might be best. I think that there's a
Mhm.
lot of analytics go into it.
There were, and one of the things that I noticed too at the start of the game, before the first pitch was even thrown, Robin Heron was already up in the bullpen and she was warming up. So that kind of told me that she was going to go ahead and Johnny Holstaff this to the end. You also had Cam Harrison right after Robin got done with her bullpen. Cam Harrison was out there too. So she made sure that all the arms were ready if need be, because if the wheels started to fall off, she wanted to mitigate the run scoring at the first as fast as she could. And I think that's why you saw Robin come in after that.
Whether it
She
was
did well.
illness, whether it was illness, whether it was execution, Arkansas lost that series in the first 4 innings of Friday's game by throwing 4 different pitchers, and there were reasons you had to.
Yeah. Really quick too. Jamie Traxel talked about this, head coach for Ole Miss, talked about that delayed double steal that they attempted and were successful with. She said that they had tried it one time and had never practiced it the entire season. It was all in the third base coach's call. She said it was super gutsy. I was completely astonished when I heard that they had not even practiced that, more or less tried to run it.
You try to put pressure, and let's be honest, Ole Miss was playing with house money.
Yeah.
Arkansas had pressure on them. They didn't respond well early, responded well in the middle of the game, obviously, to get it tied back up. And I think most people, when it got tied 4-4, thought Arkansas was going to come back and win it. We can dissect it. They made mistakes. They did great things during the year. This is one of the better seasons they've had around here. If this is your bottom, then your ceiling must be
Good.
pretty high.
Let's talk about ceilings too, really quick too. Michael Kepsky brings this up. Um, DVH is due for to finally win it all and break up this stupid curse. Is it Omaha or bust?
Uh, I think that again, this is expectations. Every year that Arkansas continues to put out a great baseball team during the season, people are going to expect them to get to Omaha. It's not that easy, but they've done a really good job doing it. Do I think that if he doesn't win it this year, that he won't? No, I think he's still got 5 or so years left in him, and I think they're knocking on the door. They may never win it. They may be the Buffalo Bills, but they also may be the Kansas City Chiefs. We're gonna find out one of these days.
Yeah,
You notice
it's.
I didn't say Dallas Cowboys in the '90s. I said Dallas Cowboys.
I saw a thing on social media where it said, "Did you know that I was told that there's a good possibility that I may be born and die before the Cowboys win another world championship?" I thought, man, that's pretty dark.
That's true, but I haven't been alive for 5.
You have, but
And I just don't jump off the ship because of a 30-year drought.
no, you hold on to the Titanic for as long as you can,
Mhm.
because I mean, Jerry Jones there. I mean, it looks like a Titanic at this point, but that's neither here nor there. So really quick, whenever Arkansas takes the field on Friday, what are some of the things that fans should be looking for early?
Well, I hope everybody stays healthy and doesn't eat any bad places or get any bugs. That's a key thing. But I think you need to be a situation where you go about getting an early lead, no matter what you have. I mean, whether it's the first game, the second game, then you go about it in a situation to where you have to be ready to play from pitch one.
Yep. And I'm going to be looking at the defense. That's going to be my focus, I think, because if Arkansas's fielding defense is spot on, I think that there's not a lot of room for error for any of these other teams, because if Arkansas's defense is sealed up shut, these teams are not going to be able to, with extra bases, be able to extend it from on a single going from first to third and being able to hold them at second, stuff like that. Those are the things that I'm going to be looking for, because if Arkansas is starting to give up extra free bases like that, that's going to put them behind the eight ball.
Yeah, and I think we'll just see. You never know what's going to happen at the ballpark, and looking forward to it Friday, though.
All right. Y'all, I want to say thank you for joining us this evening. We went a little bit long just because we got the NCAA selection show that happened this afternoon. So for Dudley and myself, Jason, I want to thank you guys for joining us, and go Hogs.